Hey folks, welcome to another Watertrek 360. I'm back here in Bridgeport, Connecticut at Captain's Cove, and today I'm going to be checking out a couple of lights. This here is Divevolk's SL50, and that is the BB14-7S from Leton Power. Let's see how they stack up. Glad to see our subscriber list is growing nicely. If you are new to my channel, please click that subscribe button in the lower right and join us in our adventures. As I mentioned in my previous video, I was looking for some lights to replace my older ones that finally died. That search had me looking at a variety of established lights like Big Blue, Kraken, Keldon, and others, running anywhere from $800 to $1,800 per light. I spent weeks researching them, painstakingly creating a spreadsheet of all potential candidates. I had some minimum qualifications. I set a modest budget for myself. I mean, this is an expensive sport, and if you can get similar quality for less, why not? My criteria was as follows. They had to go deeper than 100 feet. They couldn't be too large from a size or weight standpoint. They had to have a beam angle of at least 90 or greater to reduce washout, since I mostly do video, and had to have a variable intensity from a lumen standpoint. They needed to have a Kelvin between 5,000 and 6,000, and if possible, have color augmentation like red or blue light capabilities. Lastly, and most importantly, it needed a CRI index of 90 or greater. Shortly after buying the Divevolk tripod and their upgraded lens holder bracket, I couldn't resist and ordered the Divevolk SL50. Do check out the upgrade video I did a few weeks ago. Anyway, this was a great opportunity to test the SL50 against the Leton Power, which I've been using for a couple of months now. Before we start, let's review how I tested them and my rating system. I did individual and comparative pool tests. Then I did controlled battery tests in a bathroom sink. I did some open water tests both in Florida and in Long Island Sound. These are some photos taken of me by another diver during some of my tests. You'll see the adjacent details in my rating system as I go through them. So, depth, a minimum of 100 feet. Everything else gets set to a scale. Durability. Wreck diving up here in New England, I need something that can take abuse. It has to be durable. Ease of use. What makes my life easy, both above and below the water? Versatility / quality. Where and in how many different scenarios can I use it? And how did I like the results? Lastly, cost. Now, this may be the lowest category, but it can be a major factor. This is a sliding scale based on the previous 4 categories, with the bottom line question of one thing. Was the cost worth it to me? So let's take a look at Divevolk first. Divevolk has a couple of lights. They've got the PV22. While this is sold by Divevolk, it is actually made by Scuba, also known as the PV22. I mean, it looks to be a solid light, depth rated to 330 feet. It has a 100-degree beam angle. I believe there's a variable one in there as well. It's got 1,000 to 3,000 K lumen. It has 5,600 Kelvin, but since it has a CRI index of only 82, not 90, I dropped it. I ordered then the SL50. This too is made by Scuba and sold as the Soup V3K version 2. Divevolk's SL50 is their branded version of that light. So let's compare the SL50 to the Leton Power BB14-7S. For depth, Divevolk SL50 is depth rated to 100 meters, although they say 330 feet, 300 feet. The BB14 says 80 meters on their cover ad, but in the spec sheet it says 100 meters. Being conservative, I put it at 80 meters or 240 feet. Since both of these are greater than 200, they both get a 10. Durability. They are both made out of high-grade aviation aluminum alloy. They describe different processes in making it, but they are basically the same. Both are saltwater corrosion resistant, with the SL50 claiming some internal circulation conduction process as to how they use it. They both have dual O-ring screw mounts to open the housing. The difference is that the BB14 has two sections. There's another screw on here on the bottom. I'm not sure exactly why, but it's not shown in the specs. But it is another point of failure to me. I saw a review where someone complained about flooding. They may not have been aware of this additional thread. I always double check it prior to using the light. They both provide extra sets of O-rings for the body, but not for the ball mount. They give you some O-ring grease, but the amount of Divevolk put in their container is pretty laughable. They both got 1-inch ball mounts and use a 5mm Allen wrench to attach them. The Leton provides you with a wrench. Divevolk does not. The BB14 screws directly into the housing, whereas the SL50 sits on a mounting plate with a wraparound lip. The BB14 has a double-plated, hardened, tempered face, 6mm. The SL50 doesn't say what kind of glass plate it has, its resistance, whatever. It's also bubble shaped, and that's really what I don't like about it. I mean, while the purpose is to diffuse light, it juts out, so you can't lay it flat or stand it up on the glass face to protect it. It is the first thing that gets bumped or banged when it's inside a camera bucket. The buttons. Leton's BB14 buttons I found to be a little more sensitive than the SL50, although they both are. The BB14 has these LED that can go off and went off accidentally. Both lights are strictly for underwater. Don't use them topside. They both warn of damage to the light or even fire if left on above water. I always remove the batteries when not in use. As for the battery, the SL50 has a battery pack. It is made up of 3 18650 batteries, but it doesn't say what kind. Are they high drain? Are they protected? Are they unprotected? The BB14 requires 4 18650 batteries. The specs say make sure they have high drain capacity, at least 10 amp. If you do not, you can damage the light, shorten its life expectancy. I wasn't happy with the light duration on my initial batteries, which I thought were high discharge, but apparently just short of the 10 amp. So I found some protected high drain 10 amp ones. They were a little more expensive, but they gave a much longer usage life. Don't transport either of these lights with the batteries in. Also, while traveling, make sure you store the batteries in a segregated container to prevent fire. Another reason I suggest protected batteries. Get the right ones up front. So, for durability, I give the edge to the SL50. It gets a rating of 9.4 versus the BB14, which gets a 9.2. Mostly due to BB14's double set of screw threads on the main body. Ease of use. Buttons. The SL50 has a single button with 3 settings. Once the battery is installed, first you have to press and hold the button for 3 seconds. That puts it into standby mode. You can see the light button come on and it's illuminated with alternating green-red flashing light. Press it again for high beam or 100% at 5,000 lumen. Again for 75% at 3,700 lumen. And again for 50% at 2,500 lumen. Tap it again and it goes back into standby mode. The amount of power available is indicated by the button. If you got more than 70%, it is green. Yellow shows that you're between 70 and 30%, and red means you're less than 30%. It has a dimming feature. If you press and hold the button while in high, it will step down the light intensity from 100 to 75 to 50, and then off if you release the button exactly when the light shuts off. But it doesn't really go off. The green light on the button shows that it is still in active power mode. To actually get it into standby mode, you have to click through the cycle until it's in standby. Then, after 60 minutes in standby, the light turns off completely and goes into lock mode. This is actually a feature I don't like. When I shut off a light, I want it off. I don't want to be draining the battery any more than it has to. The only way to do this is actually to unscrew the case enough to break the connection with the battery. Leton, and the big knock on Leton is actually the lack of documentation. Even simple little things like, what color the buttons get when the battery drains. I mean, bottom line is it's basically red or blue. Blue means you're good and on. Red means you're low, but there's no percentage that's given there at all. Leton has 2 buttons, each with different functions. I must admit, initially it was a bit confusing depending upon how the lights are positioned. If the light is upright, ball mount down, then left is light, right is color. However, on my rig, I've got the mount reversed. So it's in opposite. But if you think of it as counterclockwise, the one with the earlier time is the standard light and the other color. Each button has 3 settings. For the light, you press once and you get high, that's 9,000 lumen. Press it again, you get medium, that's roughly 6,700, and then low at around 4,500. Again, for off, which is truly off, not save mode, standby. The color button, you press it once and you get a red light. You press it again, you get a flashing red light. And you press it a third time, you get a blue light, and then you press it again and it goes off. Same thing, truly off, not standby. If you double click this, you'll get a pulsating red-blue flashing combination, surely enough to annoy the crap out of anybody near you. Weight. They're both a little bit heavy. With the good batteries, Leton weighs in at 1 pound 5 ounces. With the cheap batteries, 1 pound 3 ounces. The SL50 rather, is a bit lighter at 1 pound 1 ounce. They're both the same length, roughly 4 3/4 inches. The difference that the SL50 glass protrudes about another ½ inch beyond that. The BB14 is slightly wider at 2.5 inches in diameter versus 2 1/4 for the SL50. Battery charging. The SL50 took me about 2.5 hours to charge a fully depleted battery using their 100 to 240 charger. If you get a spare, you might want to buy a second charger to shrink that time frame. The BB14 requires 4 18650 batteries. The problem is they don't supply you with the battery. They don't even suggest what kind to get. The right batteries are hard to find. They come usually with a single charger. That's tough when trying to charge all 8 on a liveaboard. I bought an 8-bank charger to use on a single outlet. I bought 2. I like this footprint better. It's flatter. High discharge batteries take over 6 hours to charge. The low discharge battery takes about 5 hours. The other negative is the batteries do need to be stored in these individual cases, so they will take up some room when traveling. The SL50 is even worse. Spare batteries are not shown on the Divevolk site anywhere. I found out only by contacting them that you have to go and buy a wide-angle lens on their site. Then reply back to them immediately that you don't want the wide-angle light. What you really want is a battery instead. Then they will substitute it for the lens. If this is not done quickly, or if emails get messed up, you get a lens. You don't get a battery. This is a painful and unnecessary ordering flow that, leads to confusion. If they change this, I will add it to the description later. I found sites that sell the same battery, kind of, including Sealion own site. But if you look at the details on the battery, some of the amp and voltage info is slightly different, and I'm not really sure if they provide the same results. The SL50 comes with a small travel case as well, which will fit the light and the battery, but not the charger unless you take the ball screw mount out and then leave the battery in the light, which is really not recommended. The Leton comes with no carry case unless you want to use the original box. Neither of these are capable of USB-C type charging, so both have a large charger footprint, so to speak, when traveling. With some of these deficiencies, my rating for both of these, as it pertains to ease of use, is a 9.3. Versatility. Both lights have a 120-degree beam angle. These are basically for video. If you are a still photographer or need smaller beam spots, then there are better options out there than either of these. They both have a CRI greater than 90, although the SL50 says 96, so it's a little higher than this one. The SL50 has a Kelvin of 5600. The Leton is 6000, so the light's a bit cooler than the SL50. I couldn't see much of a difference with the SL50 when I did the high, medium, or low settings. It was really kind of minimal. The only time I saw a real difference is when I used the dimmer. The SL50 is also best mounted on a tray. The BB14 does give you a handle so that you could transform it into a handheld light if desired, say to use in a pinch for night diving as a backup, a nice little backup. The SL50 at max lumen only runs for 40 to 50 minutes. And 80 minutes at low setting. The BB14 at max says it can run for an hour and a half, 5 hours at medium, and 8 hours at low. Specs indicate, though, an average battery life of about 4.5 hours. It also states, though, they can get 17 hours at low. My tests were closer to the 8-hour watermark, and my test at high actually lasted a little more than 2 hours. However, after 70 minutes or so, it dimmed a little bit, and I'm assuming that this is to my batteries being protected. Batteries, I hate having to keep coming back to them, but it's an important factor. With only 40 to 50 minutes of light at max lumen, it's challenging for me to make the SL50 my primary light, say on a liveaboard. Recharging 2 sets of batteries during break is tough enough. Finding plug space is a premium. I mean, I'll bring it, but it will be my backup light. Again, I didn't like the SL50's on-off. Off is not off, it's standby. This is a negative for me, adding drain, however little or much, to the light that already has a short runtime. The BB14 with its 9,000 lumen gives a lot more options in deeper, darker water than Divevolk's SL50. The BB14 also gives you the ability to use the red and blue lights without a clip-on attachment. This expands your ability to get creative with night diving or trying to get bioluminescent shots and stuff like that. For me, that's a clear winner. For versatility, the SL50 gets a 9.0 and the BB14S gets a 9.8. I can do more with it for longer. Cost. Now remember, when I started this journey, I was looking at lights that ranged from $800 to $1,800 a piece without any accessories, spare batteries, etc. So both of these are way cheaper than most of those options. The dollar amounts that I used are for a pair of lights and spare batteries for each, which is what most folks would probably use for balanced lighting, right? Warranties. They both have 1-year warranties, at least on paper. For two Divevolk SL50s, each light costs $360, $359 without shipping, so that's $718. For two spare batteries from Divevolk, that's another $198. That's without a spare charger, totaling Divevolk out at $916 minimum. You can find the battery cheaper, although, like I said, I'm not sure if they'll work as well. That's a crapshoot. Scuba lamp has the AC adapter for $36 and the batteries for $68 without shipping. Total with shipping for two batteries and the charger is $187, which brings you to $905. Either way, you're over $900. Leton BB14-7S for two lights was $189. I ordered 8 of these cheap batteries for $50. I then ordered 8 more good batteries for $105, and then an 8-bank charger at $49. Cost all in for the BB14, $393. That is 43% of Divevolk's cost, a fraction of some of the other ones we were looking at. So, from a cost standpoint, SL50 gets an 8.7 and Leton gets a 10. Full disclosure, I pushed this down 0.3 points due to not having any real data on what's inside these batteries. The whole silliness about having to buy a spare battery through a lens thing, and most importantly, that it only lasts 40 minutes at high. My overall score for both of these, with all 5 categories, SL50 gets a 9.28 and the BB14-7S gets 9.66, making it the clear winner. Now I get it, folks are going to say, hey, how long can an $89 light really last? Well, that's to be determined. If these fail, and I will do a follow-up video if they do. Anyway, if the light fails, say in 2 or 3 years, and it's just a light, no flooding, and my batteries are still good, well, what the heck? Then it's just another light for $89. If it is flooded and I need batteries as well, good ones, then that's $140. Well, that is still 1/3 the cost of a single light from Divevolk, and significantly less than any of the name brands that we were looking at. I've used the BB14 a couple of dozen times now, and I've had no issues with this supposedly cheap, crappy light off of Amazon. Now remember, this is the BB14-7S. They make other lights that have higher lumen, but this is the only one to date that I know of has a CRI over 90. So be careful if you're going to get it, which one you choose. I know this was a long review and detailed, so I thank you for sticking with me if you're still here. I do have several other videos in the works, so stay tuned for those. Go out, dive, have fun, stay safe. And as usual, my friends, until the next time, go explore, get wet,